welcome to the Raider News Baseball Podcast. I'm Peter Warren. Here's my good friend Max Moore.
Hey Pete, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. It's an exciting time for the baseball season, coming to the mid to end of September, so looking forward.
About 2 weeks left in the season, and even though many playoff spots have been all but secured, there are still a few that are wide open and ready for taking.
Definitely. Let's start with the Yankees and Toronto in the East.
Only 2 games behind the Yankees, 2 or 3 games. And I think the big key for them going down the stretch is winning this next series, not only against the Mets, but winning all the series they have left. They can't afford to lose 2 out of 3.
Yeah, definitely. Toronto's been hot as of late. I know Tulowitzki just went down with an injury. Not sure how long he'll be out, but if you had to ask me, I think Toronto's run away with the series. Yankees certainly are depleted. They're old. They're tired. It's coming down to the stretch. I just don't see them catching Toronto.
I don't see them catching Toronto either. They've just been too strong ever since dealing for both Tulowitzki and Price. That lineup is, I think you can agree with me here, the best in the AL and probably the best in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Toronto's lineup, I don't care about their pitching. If they score 6, 7, 8 runs a game, their pitching just has to be okay at best. I mean, with that lineup you got, think about this. Ben Revere, then you got Tulowitzki, Batista, Encarnacion. I mean, where do you get the break? It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. We're not even including Russell Martin or Justin Smoke or Chris Colabella, who's hitting over 300 this year.
Definitely.
I think everybody's surprised on that one. But with the Yankees, though, I think they're very likely to make the wild card. MLB.com has their percentage of making the postseason at 96.7%. I think it's all but guaranteed they'll get the first wild card spot.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Hopefully they maintain that first position wild card. At best case scenario, they catch Toronto, as we said before. I don't think so, but they should surely be first place wild card and host that wild card game.
And I think that would be a big key, especially playing in the Bronx instead of playing most likely out on the West Coast with a time zone factor, and especially because I believe the AL wild card is the first of the 2 wild card games. So they'll have one less day to prepare. And jet lag, it still is going to play an effect if they have to play, one game, winner take all, in, let's say, Houston or Texas, rather than, in the Bronx, their home.
Also, to mention, the Bronx, short porch and right, short porch and left, that plays to the Yankees' advantage. They build their team off their ballpark. Brian McCann, they picked him up because that short porch and right really helps him. People like Greg Bird, that they really benefit from the short porch and hit that long ball.
Definitely. And in Houston, a very large outfield, especially in the center field. They have the hill.
Yeah. One
of my favorite, aspects of a ballpark in all of Major League Baseball. But if they have to play there, it's really going to, diminish their power advantage in the series.
All right, so now let's move it on. Let's stay local. Let's move to the NL East. And we're looking here. The Mets, the amazing Mets, have a 7.5 game lead on the Washington Nationals. So that's certainly been a surprise to many. If you asked me in April, May, I would have told you this. Many people looked at me like I was crazy. But here they are, proving me right. Hopefully, going to finish strong.
I agree with you. I wouldn't have been as bold as you saying they win the division. I thought Washington would get it. I thought the Mets, would be a good wild card team. But they have just, I think, surprised almost everybody. I believe yourself in there as one who expected it.
Yeah.
But, especially ever since they got Cespedes, that lineup has just been just foolproof. Everybody just seems to have rallied around Cespedes in the 3-hole or in the 2-hole, wherever they're hitting him, depending on the lineup, calculations. But they just seem to just be hitting more, even though they didn't hit at all for half a year.
That's a good point you bring up, Peter, because not only do you bring in such a power hitter like Cespedes, but you take off the pressure of the Daniel Murphys, Lucas Dudas, Curtis Grandersons, because before they had to step up, and now they see different pitches because they're batting differently in the order. They're seeing different pitches because there's men on base. So that really plays a huge impact, not just the signing of Cespedes, but how it affects others.
You're definitely correct on that one, Max. Because, without Cespedes, and even when Wright was injured for most of the season, you had Duda trying too hard to, be that middle-of-the-order guy. And he's good when he's just, hitting the baseball well and just, not focusing on doing too much. And same with Daniel Murphy. He was pretty much, when they were out, he was the best player on the team. And he looked like he had a lot of pressure trying to fulfill that role.
So, unless we have a 2008 collapse, I think the Mets surely have that division secured. Let's focus now on the AL Central. We don't really have to spend much time. It's obviously been done, over with. Kansas City, what can you say?
I mean, I could probably say a lot about how just you can go any way you want it. They had probably, I think, one of the best deals at deadline, getting Ben Zobrist, shoring up that second base spot, because Omar Infante, even though he was almost an all-star, he's been playing horribly this season.
Yeah, and teams like Detroit certainly let us down this year. I mean, beginning of the year, you look at it, they had Cespedes, they had Cabrera. I mean, how can you get much better than the heart of the lineup? Kinsler, I mean, but hey, credit to Minnesota, who's giving them a run for their money. So, good for them.
I mean, Minnesota's had a great season considering they were, last in the division last year. Nobody really had high hopes for them. Even with the injury to Byron Buxton, their top prospect, they felt like, all right, this is going to, at some point, teeter out a little bit. And while it has to a certain degree, they're still, in the wild card hunt. I mean, they are a few games back at Texas, but there's always a chance that, if Miguel Sanu keeps hitting like he has, and Joe Mauer, starts, hit more like he has in previous seasons, they could still make a run. There's a chance.
I mean, even if they don't make a run this year, their future is certainly bright. There's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel that I see. A lot of potential with that team. Definitely looking forward. They're great. So
totally agree.
So Kansas City should have the first place going to the playoffs, but if not, Toronto most likely. But that brings us into the wild card, Pete. It's certainly interesting.
It is. I mean, Houston and Texans have just been, the two Texas teams have just been back and forth for the last couple days now. I don't know about you, but for me, Texas very surprising this season.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
I mean, when you have Darvish, your best pitcher, your best player, going out before the season even starts, you had to assume, another season where Texas, just throwing the towel halfway through, going to let injuries take their toll and just, be like, all right, let's just hope everyone's healthy next year. But they've shocked me.
Yeah, since the deadline, since they got Hamels, you've seen a different Texas Rangers team. I mean, they were behind Houston all year long, and then these past couple weeks, even month, you can say, they've really surpassed Houston. And as we see that, they happen to be a game up on the Houston Astros, pardon me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see how, a team like that, who last year had injuries the same way, but just faltered under the pressure. While this season, for some reason, I don't know, maybe a better chemistry in the clubhouse, maybe, having Prince Fielder back probably does make a difference,
certainly.
Having a power guy in the middle of the order with experience who's hitting, for average like he never has before. There's a stabilizing presence in that lineup. Is probably why they're doing so well this year, having that stabilizing presence.
So now, Houston and Texas actually play tonight, the last game of the series. Looking forward, who do you think will win the division? Who do you think will drop down and most likely play the Yankees in the wild card?
I'd probably have to say Texas, just because they've been hot.
Texas to win the division?
Yes, to win the division. While Houston, I just think they're too young. The Carlos Gomez trade hasn't really worked out. He's struggled. I've always thought he's a little bit overrated because, he only started hitting really in Milwaukee. And while his defense is, Gold Glove caliber, that hitting's always been teetering on, suspect. He wasn't a very good hitter at the beginning of the season. And it just seems like they have to work out their problems in the outfield, seeing whether he has to, get some time on the bench because they have some quality prospects.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there simply on this. Houston, love them, been great all year, but there's still a bunch of young kids, rookies. Quite frankly, they're just happy to be in the playoff contention. So I see them dying down a little bit at the end. Their young, inexperienced lineup kind of not getting them all the way through the year. The first year, 160 games. So I just don't see them surpassing Texas, as Texas has already caught them already. So I'd have to agree with you there. Say Texas is going to win the division. Houston versus the Yankees in the wild card game in the Bronx.
Now, you don't see the LA Angels coming back, or no?
No. Talk about a team of disappointments.
Oh.
I mean, beginning of the year, you expect Trout, Pujols, Hamilton, and they just collapsed. Terrible. I mean, they've signed Pujols. Have they made the playoffs since they signed him? It's terrible.
They made it last year, but they got bounced to the Kansas City Royals in the first round.
Awful. I mean, come on. They signed Pujols, Hamilton to these monster deals. What have they done since?
Hamilton's already gone.
Yeah.
He's in Texas.
Come on. It's terrible.
It is. And everybody's always raving about Mike Trout, who is the best player in baseball. But, I mean, he hasn't had that great of a season this year.
Yeah.
He's been struggling the last couple months, hitting, teetering around 200, 250.
I mean, it certainly hurts him when no one else is doing their job. He can't do everything. Think of it, he's still only 23 years old.
That is true.
How much do you want the kid to do? He's still a kid. I mean, come on. LA Angels, I expect more from you. Definitely disappointment.
Very disappointing.
So now let's move to the NL. Now, we probably have our 5 teams set here.
Yeah.
Just a matter of who's going to play who and home field advantage. So, most likely we're going to see Pittsburgh play the Cubs in the wild card game.
I would say it's all but guaranteed at this point.
I mean, if Joe Madden doesn't get NL Manager of the Year, something is wrong. Look at his lineup. I know the Mets, Terry Collins, great story, but he's got that superstar. He's got those role players, those veterans who've proved themselves. I mean, look at this. Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Starling Castro. Come on, that team is incredible.
That team is incredible. I mean, I've been high on the Cubs for the last few years now just because the amount of prospects they have. And this year I thought, they do well, about a 500 team, but I think they've blown my idea of how well they could do so quickly, like out of the water. I mean, you talked about them, Bryant, Baez, Addison Russell, Jorge Soler. It's just a lineup that you look down and you say, they're good this year, next year they'll be really good, and who knows after that. They could be all century caliber.
And arguably the most incredible thing is Jake Arrieta. I mean, they signed John Lester to a 6-year, $155 million deal.
Yeah.
And to think that in September, going into that wild card game, I'd put my money on Jake Arrieta rather than John Lester. How about you?
Oh, I would as well. I mean, even just looking back to last season in Oakland, Lester faltered at the end of that game.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a 3-4 run lead, and he, maybe not his issue, maybe he should have come out a little earlier, but he was still in that game, and he just faltered at the end. And I don't know if I'd really trust him in another wild card situation.
So considering the game would probably be at Pittsburgh, would you pitch Garrett Cole?
Yes, I would think you have to pitch Garrett Cole. He's your ace. He's at home, and I just think there's nobody better I'd rather have on that squad.
So, to recap, we probably have Toronto winner of the East, Kansas City Central, Texas the West, New York and Houston playing in the wild card for the East, for American League, for the National League.
For National League, we have the Mets in the NL East, much to our Mets fans out there. In the Central, we have St. Louis. In the wild card from the Central, happens to be both of them, Pittsburgh and Chicago, and you didn't really get to discuss it. I think we can agree. The LA Dodgers all but have the thing in the NL West wrapped up.
So, on our next podcast, we'll predict the playoffs, and thank you for joining us.